So we're back, everybody, to the Kinetic PE Mix Show, and I'm your host as always, Marcus Hart. So Tosh, family, you are a legend, and I want to welcome you to the Kinetic PE Mix. You grew up in London. I heard the London accent, on the other side, and you smashed it at Wharton. You raked in some tech cash, and then you said, "I'm out," and moved to Mexico City to write about sex and live bold. That
Mm.
is a totally wild leap. What sparked that fire in you to ditch the corporate grind for the shameless mission that you own and take us back to where it all started?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Marcus. I'm super grateful to be here. I think I grew up in quite a refined environment. We had school uniforms in my school and lots of rules in England, so I always had to be a good girl. And I think that just sparked a lot of rebellion in me from unfortunately a very young age. And then by the time I was, went through Wharton and worked in the tech industry, I was kind of done following the traditional path. And
Mhm.
I think it's also important just to remember, you are the light that shines in the world, and you can really make an impact in the things that you're really passionate about. And so I thought, rather than me just continuing on with the corporate grind, I could actually write something that might impact some people in a positive way and also make me happy. So yes, I'm grateful that I made that career switch a couple of years ago now.
That is straight up mashing and a lot of grit along with it, Tosh. I've been there, military burnout, chasing the wrong hustle till like Jesus flipped it off for me. And
Mhm.
then you went from suits to smut. I love that.
Yeah.
So, what was the moment you knew that this is me, this is my lane?
Well, I don't know. I'm still developing that voice actually, but I think one of the things that I find most interesting is that as humans, I think loving each other is one of our most beautiful characteristics and aspects. And yet in our society, it's so misunderstood and even kind of hidden in a shameful way. And I just think it's beautiful that humans love each other. So basically, I've been developing some journaling techniques as well, where I help women to explore their sexuality. So it's something that, maybe you don't want to write super publicly on the internet like I do, but you can
Mhm.
explore these things in the comfort of your own home, with some certain prompts and techniques and things. So I think it's just a bit of fun as well. And I think also the way that I like to help women is to work on this aspect of shame, because then when you feel less shamed of something, you can show up as your full self in your work and your life and in your family. So yeah, I just want to kind of reconnect those aspects of the human experience and remember that they're all a part of us and what makes us human and beautiful. So yeah.
Yeah, you nailed some keywords there that really stuck out to me, love,
Mhm.
and humanity, like, being able to love each other and the importance of like allowing women to feel shameless about
Mhm.
their bodies, about themselves as a whole, and the human experience, the whole human experience that we are here to experience, like, and people sometimes they want to crucify themselves because there's a lot of limitations on on what we should it's these invisible limitations. Let me correct that. Invisible limitations on what we should and who we could be and what we should do. But that's just not how things are. And with all the division right now and the polarization, love is so much needed. If you can, you know, add people into that loop, I think that's incredible.
Yeah. Well, I also just talked to my therapist about this last week because, even as a person who I like to be more shameless, but I still have, body shame sometimes. So I was talking to my therapist about this, and she was saying that when she first started her therapy practice, she was so shocked to hear from men, especially, that they don't care about cellulite or women's tummies or, any of these other aspects of the female body. And actually, that these are, societal narratives that we've put on ourselves through
Mhm.
advertising, and mostly these narratives are made up by other women, right? Like men
Yeah.
probably don't even care about a
No,
lot of these things.
we're
And
not even gonna bash you in public.
right, exactly. So I think it's really, and that's, I think, a lot of I hope to be, a woman who supports and uplifts other women, because the last
Yeah.
thing that I want is another person to be like, oh, well, your hair needs to be dyed a bit blonder because then you'd be more beautiful or whatever. So I
Right.
think that self acceptance can only start from hopefully somebody within the female community. And yeah, kind of go from there.
Yeah, they need it, man, more than anything, and that's the juice right there. Like, I want to dig in a little bit deeper, family. You live in Mexico City now, fluent in Spanish. I heard a little bit of it. when we first got on, and you're writing about sex, life like it's a sermon, and I'm here
Yes.
for it. I've seen chaos in my life with war zones, division, but you have flipped misery into mission.
Mm.
How did that switch from tech to sex writer transform you, if at all? And what's one story where you saw your words hit someone's soul?
Yeah, that's a great question. And to be honest, it was mostly by accident because, I like to write about almost anything, but some of my male friends were like particularly curious about my intimate experiences. So that's why I
Mhm.
decided to start writing about them because also this is an area of my life where, again, I feel less shame than other people. So maybe I can contribute something to the conversation that not many other writers or people are willing to do. So I think my favorite example of this is that I have an article called How to Achieve Orgasm Equality, and it specifically focuses on female pleasure, these top 10 tips for female pleasure that I put together from studying some different psychologists. And so I've had, a variety of people read this article. So I've had a family friend who's like 10 years younger than me, who was in high school, trained her high school boyfriend on all of the ways that she likes to be pleasured. So she's been having a really, really great time with him. And then I've also, on the flip side, had my friends' mothers who are maybe divorced or with new partners secretly reach out to me and say, I'm having a great time with my new partner, having read your work as well. So, I didn't intend to have that kind of impact when I first started out. I mostly just wanted to draw attention to the fact that this is an issue, orgasm inequality is a big issue in heterosexual relationships. And I think also men want to please women, so it's just a
Yeah.
question of equipping people with the right tools. It's a skill that anyone can learn. And so I'm really grateful to have been able to share that message with other people and impact my female friends' lives, which has been awesome.
It's awesome. I, for one, definitely believe that, like, you should always continue to learn
Mm,
the woman's anatomy,
mm,
as a man, even though we can be so selfish sometimes, especially when it comes to orgasm equality. Um, but after a while, you like, especially if you've been with someone a set number of time and this is going to be the person you're going to spend your life with. You just want to keep that spark going, and this information, can definitely, be beneficial for men as well to peek into the side and women, who are in the monogamous relationships and or they are married, just to level up that intimacy game.
yeah,
So I love that,
totally.
Tosh.
And I always talk about it because I've slept with a lot of men, and not all men are good at this thing. So if you are a man who becomes really good at the skill of pleasuring women, you will have a huge competitive advantage over
Yeah,
a lot of men out there, like it's not that hard to be better than most men at this specific skill. So that's what I continue to tell men. In the same way that now, like emotional intelligence is very important to women, I think this is another
yeah.
area that you can really excel as a man and help meet, your female partner and with her needs in the modern day. So yes, I'm happy to be the evangelizing that for people
Yeah.
all over the world.
I am a magazine cover for, like, knowing that, like, there's no competition when you know how to please a woman, and
Yeah,
I like that. Plus, you put the emotional connection too, like, and that just deepens the relationship that much better. And a lot of men have in a mind, oh, my woman cheat on me, or she leaves me after we broke up, she's gonna find somebody better than me, so that's always in her mind, like, is he's better than me, like, that's gonna be the first question that we ask,
right.
like, when a woman steps out on us, or, after a breakup, like, so that new dude, is he better than me in bed?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and I think, like, even though, not all relationships, at least in my experience, are supposed to last forever, but you can
Right, right.
still have beautiful, positive memories with somebody. And I dedicated that article to the man that I have slept with who gave me the most orgasms. And I think it's nice as a testament to my relationship with him. Maybe we were not supposed to like get married and have like a beautiful family together, but I still had a beautiful time with him. And I'm really grateful to him for that. So I guess in some ways he definitely inspired the article because I hadn't actually been with somebody until him who had given me that much pleasure before,
Mhm.
So that was a really, really fun piece to be able to write. And I now the pieces and the work that I'm doing are transforming more into helping women with this shame aspect as well. So being shamelessly sexy and working on shame to show up in their work life and their professional life as well. So, everything's kind of evolving in a good direction, I think.
Yeah, just to hold it on stories right there, you have definitely, you dated Mexican man,
Yes.
and you got these pagan stories that has went semi-viral, and my listeners,
Yes.
they are depleted, they craving this shameless type of Jesus love. What's one
Mhm.
practical tip that you would drop for them to own up to their desires, faith first, no shame?
Well, I think he's talking specifically about men because men and women experience shame very differently. Brene Brown has talked a lot about this, and so I kind of borrow her words on this
Mhm.
topic.
Yeah, she's a good one.
Women, we experience shame from a bunch of different sources. So it could be our mothers, our friends, like the advertising world. It's the whole society telling you who you are and what you should be. But for men, shame is really about weakness, right? And showing weakness
Yeah,
and how weakness is basically the source of everything. You can't be perceived to be weak. You can't cry, in order to be a man. But I think as we were kind of talking about and touching on just a bit earlier, the requirements, right, and the definition of masculinity, I think, is also changing right now because a lot of women are graduating from college. They maybe have their own income, these kinds of things. So, what can you
yeah,
provide, right, as a man? And I think, again, as I was mentioning, emotional intelligence, being able to listen, express your feelings, like those, I think, are actually signs of like great, like the masculinity that we want to be moving towards, right?
yeah,
And how you're going to stay in a long-term relationship with a woman who is, just as intelligent as you, or maybe even makes more money than you, right? Like how does that show up with your masculinity? So I think that's what men can really explore is, maybe we grew up, I don't know, I've never been a man, but I can imagine that you grew up maybe on like sports teams or something. And there was maybe somebody, an older person in your life who really drilled into you what this kind of intense form of masculinity should be. And the reality is that the world has even changed in the last, 20 years. So you can really maybe talk to the women in your life and say, like, what does being a man mean to you? Right. And then see if that actually doesn't quite add up to the old, traditional form of masculinity, that might even be stopping you from accessing aspects of yourself. So I think, being a good husband, like being caring, helping with household chores, like these are all things that like maybe you would, box in to say, okay, this wasn't like the typical traditional experience of the man, but now that's what women need, right? So it's like it's a really
yeah.
important like symbiotic relationship, I think, between the evolving needs of women and then the evolving ideas of what masculinity is happening at the same time. So it's a very interesting time and challenging time, I think, also to be a man.
It's very challenging if you're
Yeah.
single.
Right.
I mean, but even if you're in a long-term relationship too, these skills that's necessary to sustain a long-term relationship. Because like many women, like you said, nowadays they looking for long-term suitors. It ain't like how it used to be where women would like to sleep around constantly and like I'm hearing more and more like I want a husband now. I want a real relationship. And people are just burned out from like, just all of the crap, in the dating pool and they just want someone to connect with.
Yeah.
And it's this narrative out there, especially in the YouTube world with all of these crazy things that like expectations, people coming up with lists. Oh, you gotta have this, and six. But it's really not that.
Yeah.
I think that's more of like, if we really shift our mindset, we actually need a hybrid of both the traditional side and
Exactly.
this evolving side where we have to be able as men to connect with our women on an emotional level and be able to stimulate them both intellectually and physically. So
Mm,
this is great conversation here, like I'm
mhm.
loving it because, I'm 39 now and I realize it, like, man, if I'm not available to my woman, it's gonna get things are not gonna be sustainable, long term. So
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think the basics is always just kindness and listening, and also you
that's
have a
yeah,
good
you
moral
don't have to be
character.
you don't
Yeah.
have to be a tampon.
Yeah, exactly. And even, if anything, I love the movement as well of like, not that all men want this, but there's also like the movement towards like stay-at-home husbands and like helping to raise the
Yeah,
kids more. And I don't know, it really always touches me when now I have male friends who are taking paternity leave, right, from their job as well. So maybe they take a month or two off if they can to help raise their kids too. So it's like I think the role of the father is like so much more involved, right, in modern
yeah,
families and modern kids. And that's also I think a great way that men can explore their masculinity in a way that was kind of denied to them by just being like, oh, you have to go to work and you can't, maybe hang out with your kids on the weekend kind of thing. So yeah, I think it's an exciting time for masculinity as well. And hopefully it can continue to move in a more positive direction.
So I'm gonna say this, and then I'm gonna bring us right back. So,
Okay.
like, I mean, this is because this is very important. Like,
Mhm,
just seeing fathers be more involved. You know,
mhm,
than the fathers of yesteryear, because like a lot of us, we grew up with fathers not in our life, or if they were in our life, it was like this far like disconnect
mhm.
that like you might as well not have had a father.
Exactly.
So, I think we have learned from what we went through, and we don't want our kids to go through that, or our offspring to go through that. And I myself, I'm a father, and what happens is like I gotta make sure that my schedule is flexible to be able to still spend quality time with my kids, be able to get one-on-one time with them, and let them know that like, hey, dad is a disciplinarian, but he's also a nurturer too. And man can be absolutely be both.
Yeah, exactly. That's super important. And also, I'm sure they're I don't know how old they are, but they're probably cute and small and like, maybe they don't appreciate that right now, but like that's also part of their psyche, right? Like you're really making an impact in your kids' like day-to-day lives, right? And then that will also change their expectations and ideas of what masculinity and manhood is. So I think that's like a really beautiful thing. You should feel very proud.
Yeah, I am proud, even though my dad, he said, "Man, you take off work so much." I was I mean, I got kids, dad. I care about my kids. In the back of my mind, I want to say, I'm not like you.
Yeah. But also they're only young once, and it's crazy because my friends
Right.
are having babies and they'll be already a year old and you go from having this tiny little being until a toddler already and then they grow up so quickly. So, it's really important.
Yeah.
And actually, really interestingly, I saw this with 50 Cent and Eminem. I don't know if you
Mhm.
saw this, but basically when they were working together, this was like 20 years ago or something 50 was like, why don't you come on tour with us? Like, why are you staying at home? Like, this is the peak, right? This is like the best part of our career. And then Eminem was saying, well, Haley, his daughter, was like really young at the time. And he was like, 50, like, I can't go on this tour with you. Like, I have to look after my daughter. And now, she's grown, she's married. Like, it's amazing, like, the time that has passed so
Yeah.
quickly. And Eminem really just chose to be like a good father to his daughter at the time. And like 50 was basically saying how he couldn't understand that decision. But now, 20 years later, I mean, that's her entire youth gone, basically. So, yeah, I found that a really interesting dynamic between 50 Cent and Eminem.
Eminem is a fantastic father, and he's had
Yeah,
done an amazing job with his daughter. Like, I mean, that's a real success story right there.
yeah, exactly.
So let me plug for you, in this insert right here. So Tasha's Substack is Miseducated,
Mhm.
is where she's unpacking this heat. Stories like on dating Mexican man and how to achieve orgasms equality. So you want to hit up miseducated.substack.com, and that's MISS educated, .substack.com, to dive into her shamelessly sexy and all about transformation. And we having a great time here. So Tasha, scribble, we're gonna scribble a couple things down that we talked about like prior to this. So you out here living unapologetic, and I'm vibing with it at all in your life, or in this version of fearlessness. Does faith ever tie into this? Because I'm all about Jesus. I told you that, showing us
Yeah.
live bold, not box in. He's not here to condemn us.
Yeah, well, I think faith can take a lot of different forms. And one thing that I think faith is basically saying, I'm going to take that courage, right, in the moment and take that leap into the unknown. And that I think was a big moment for me when I quit my job in New York 3 years ago, because I had this childhood dream of publishing my novel. And the corporate world, as we were talking, just wasn't working for me. So I had to say, hey, like, I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to leave New York. I'm going to move to Mexico and just pray and hope that everything's going to work out. And actually, it did. So, of course, there's always that transition period, when you need to make friends in the new city or find out where to live. But I think, yeah, faith is basically just taking that leap of faith is really important
Yeah.
because you just got to trust that it's all going to work out, in the future. And I guess that's also good advice for me right now because I feel like every day is almost an act of faith when you're working in a career that has a lot of uncertainty and you might not know, where my next client is going to come from. So yeah, I think that's how faith shows up in my life today.
I love that gentle definition of faith, and that's a gentle push for people to like look at faith a different way, and that's so much to religion.
Mhm.
and that's why people say, I don't have any faith, really, like you're living every day, you climbing mountains, how do you know if you know how to climb a mountain if you don't have faith that you can? So,
Exactly. Yeah. And it's
it's
okay if you
perfectly
don't if
said.
you've never climbed a mountain before, it's fine, right? But you still have
Mhm.
that's the whole point is the faith that you can do it if you want to. So, yeah.
Yeah. So let's turn up the heat a little bit. Your
Mhm.
novel,
Yep.
These Perfectly Careless Dames. It's
Yeah.
spicy, coming of age of a teen romance, like set in
Yep.
London.
Yep.
I ain't reading smut on air, but I'm hyped up about it. What's the heartbeat behind this story and how will it hit the readers where they live
Yeah.
at?
Well, I would say that, I grew up in London, which is a beautiful, historic, culturally fascinating
Yeah.
place. When you are, an adult, you've already done a bunch of stuff, right? But you can only do things for the first time once, right? So this is when you're a teenager and you're going out and exploring the city for the first time. So I tried to capture all those moments for my main character, Abby Chesterton, as she also wants to kind of break out of the mold of her stuffy, but like classy English family, and she really wants to become an artist. But because of her background, she can't quite do that. She needs this guy Jonah Wood, who is a philosophical American kid living in London as well, and he helps her to develop her creative talents. And hopefully she's the goal of the book is that she's trying to get into his very academically rigorous school, which has a much better art program. So of course they have a little bit of an entanglement romantically along the way. So yes, the readers need to figure out if keep reading and find out whether she gets into the school, and then if they end up in a relationship together or not. Happy ever after, that
Wow.
kind of thing.
I love it. Let me plug the book here. So family, Tosh book,
Mhm.
These Perfectly Careless Things is out now. Spicy, real, and perfect for anyone chasing that coming of age fire. And you just
Exactly.
heard a little bit about it. So grab it and follow her on TikTok. She is on TikTok at Miss Educated underscore. So that's MISS educated underscores for all the good vibes. So, I love that, Tosh. It takes me back to like my own messy growth days.
Mhm.
Some of my crew, we wrestling with shame, sex, dreams, and whatever.
Yes.
You have gone viral talking bold. How do you shake off the haters and keep it shameless? Because I know the haters come out of the woodworks.
Yep. Yep. Well, I do get some haters, unfortunately, but ultimately, you know what? I just listened to Michelle Obama, and she
Mhm.
says she's never ever read a comment section for any of her work, like any of her
Yeah.
Instagram posts, whatever. So I'm kind of going more towards that vibe where I'm gonna try not to read anything. And also, ultimately, a lot of the times, especially on TikTok, the person who's trolling you, you click on their profile and they'll have no posts, private account, right? They're just like a little egg, faceless egg in the ether.
Yeah.
So, here it takes a lot of courage and a lot of, strength and bravery, I would say, to like put yourself fully out there on the internet. And unfortunately, as these, topics aren't usually talked about or people don't want to hear about them, you just have to develop a kind of a thicker skin over time. And that's been definitely a hard learning for me. But I think I'm getting there. You know what I mean? It's like I'm luckily also, I wish in some ways I was growing faster in terms of my platform. But if it's just one day at a time and I'm just kind of steadily growing, there's no level of just jumping in the deep end that I can't handle. It's like I'm just taking every single day in a sustainable way at a time. So, yeah, one comment here and there doesn't really phase me, but I hope, I don't just fall off a cliff one day and, everything goes crazy and then I'll have to deal with like a barrage of people hating me on the internet. But we can't control what other people do. So,
We absolutely can, and again, your shameless vibe, it got me thinking, so about how maybe our people out there can, share a time that they broke free from shame, maybe a story, military story, or a faith pivot, so long as they keep it raw and tied to your mission, they can put it in the comments section as they are following along with us. So, you
totally.
know, yeah, you're dropping bombs today, and I'm totally zoned out from it. You're on a mission to help the world be shamelessly sexy from Mexico City to Substack.
Yeah.
So I have seen Jesus flip tables and still love hard. What's your big why behind this, and how is it changing lives? Well, I mean, you already talked about that, but if you want to add anything else additional to that.
Yeah, I think basically I've come to the conclusion that, even 100 years ago, I had my great grandmother. She lived in a farm in Ireland, basically no electricity. And that's how it was for generations and generations.
Yeah,
And I've had quite a spiritual calling in that sense by doing a peyote ceremony, among other things, where I really
okay.
connected with those female ancestors in my family who never had the education or were tied down in a marriage or some other way that they were like not able to share their voice. And so,
Yeah.
we all get a short life here on this earth. And I think it's important to remember, all of the hills that your ancestors climbed in order for you to be here today. So I really try to just leverage that in my day to day life and say, look, I come from a very privileged position. I have a great education. What can I do? What can I say that maybe other women haven't been able to say? Nor my, ancestors as recently as 2 generations ago. So that's what drives me to just light fires and with my articles on the internet and hopefully, make people think about things in a different way, kind of as we've discussed so far. So I'm very grateful to do what I do. And I hope to continue to write and publish articles for many years to come.
We look forward to it. You absolutely are proof that transformation ain't a straight line. It's bold, it's
Totally.
sometimes messy, it comes with a backstory that, maybe from privilege or not from privilege. And it's beautiful though at the end of the day. So one last question before, we close on out. What's one hope that you got for folks who's hearing this today?
Yeah, I would just say I think this is a message that I've also been focusing on with myself is self-compassion and self-kindness. I think it really helps a lot, mental health wise. If you're struggling with anything or you feel like you haven't achieved whatever you wanted to in your life yet, or da da da, to just turn towards yourself and forgive yourself, be kind to yourself, and speak to yourself like you would, a good friend. In the
Okay.
words of Kristen Neff, who's a psychologist at UT Austin that I follow a lot. So I found having a self-compassion practice in my life to be super helpful.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to wish for myself and all of your listeners today is just continue to be kind to yourself. And then you'll be amazed how much more energy and love you have to give to other people. So yeah.
Tosh, you a gift, and thanks for bringing the heat today. Family, won't you tell us where they can catch up with you? Drop maybe your Substack, socials, book deets. Let's get them all connected with you.
Yes, you can reach out to me on Instagram at Tash Doherty _ or Miseducated _ And yes, have a read of my Substack and These Perfectly Careless Things on Amazon. So, but yes, you've already been hyping my work up plenty this whole time. So I really appreciate that, Marcus. And it's
Yeah.
been great to talk to you today.
Yeah, it's great work, by the way, so like I got a chance to breeze through it. I'm gonna go back and like take a more deep dive, once we're done here. So there it is, fam. Kinetic P Mix fam out there. Tosh Doherty, she's the real deal. Hit up miseducated.substack.com and snag these perfectly careless things. The links will be below, wherever you're listening to, wherever you're watching. This EP is for you, So if it hits you at all, smash that like, drop a shameless in the comments, and share it with a soul who's stuck that need this fire. Subscribe now, hit the bell. We're raw and we're rolling every week. Up at marcus-hart.com with my free renewal toolkit and mastermind. Tosh, you're family now, so welcome to the family.
Thank you, Marcus. It was amazing to talk to you. So great to chat.
Yes. Okay, absolutely. So that's all we have for you today. Many blessings, peace, and lots of love. Until next time.
Transform You Radio. You are now tuned in to Transform You Radio. You hear me? Check. I stand for what you stand for. I'm at your door like the landlord. I can see the future, yeah, I fast forward. I get on the mic and I transform. Follow me, I'm in rare form. Follow me on this world tour. The asteroid that you can't avoid. Small changes make impact. I ran for it, I stand for it, I'm not sitting back. You can leave the rat race or you can leave the trap. Come with me, let's rap. Take a trip and we pack. And we'll be right back. Yeah, come with me, let's rap. Take a trip and we back. And we'll be right back. Yeah, I stand for what you stand for. Hey, I get on the mic and I transform. Follow me on this world tour. The asteroid that you can't avoid.
Follow me, follow me.